ACSportstips.com, continuing with our Week 3 game breakdown. It's a dandy. The Notre Dame Fighting Irish traveling to East Lansing to take on the 10th-ranked Spartans and head coach Mark D'Antonio. It's going to be a great matchup. It's an 8 o'clock start. It's prime time on ABC, and we'll give you a prediction of this game a little bit later in the week. We're just going to break down some news and notes about both teams and a couple of factors that might play into the game plans. Let's talk about two questions for each team. Number one for Notre Dame. Is Notre Dame back to dominance? They're sitting at 2-0. They had an impressive victory over Navy and a gutty performance over Big Ten opponent Purdue last week, 17-16. How good is Notre Dame? That's the question we have to find out for Brian Kelly and the staff. For Michigan State, they're sitting at number 10. As a whole, how good is the Big Ten Conference after last week's dismal performances by Penn State, Wisconsin, Nebraska, and Illinois? We're going to have to see. They're sitting at number 10, and is the Big Ten overrated at this point? To date, Michigan State's the creme de la creme, and we expect a great effort for both teams Saturday night. Let's break down Notre Dame right now. They have a good quarterback in Everett Golston. He's a sophomore. He threw for 289 yards last week against Purdue. However, he was hurt late in that game. He hurt his thumb, and the rumor coming out of South Bend is that he will start this week against Michigan State. Keep an eye out for that. He's only a sophomore. Tommy Rees, last year's starter, came off the bench. He was only 3 of 8 for 35 yards, but he led the Irish to that game-winning field goal against Purdue. So Brian Kelly and his staff feels confident. They have Everett Golston, which brings mobility at the quarterback position, and he has experience with Tommy Rees, and that's something they're going to need going into this game against Michigan State. The running game, led by Theo Riddick, was dismal last week. They only had 52 yards rushing against Purdue. They're going to need a running game with him and Sierra Wood, last year's starter, who was suspended. He comes back. Look for Brian Kelly to get the running game going. They need to run the football to take the pressure off of Everett Golston, because that strong defensive front by Michigan State will pose problems. So you need, if you're a Notre Dame fan and the staff, they need to get the ball vertical. They need to run the football to take the pressure off of Golston, because look for Michigan State to crunch the line of scrimmage and force Golston to make his read. So that'll be the game plan. Defensively for the Fighting Irish, they have to stop Le'Veon Bell. Le'Veon Bell is the running back for Michigan State. He's a Heisman Trophy contender. He's averaging 4.5 yards a rush. He's been on SportsCenter for his jumping ability. He jumped over a Boise State player. Michigan State loves to run the football. They start an inexperienced quarterback as well, making only his 3rd career start, in Andrew Maxwell. He's a junior. He's starting at home, though. He has progressed. So look for Notre Dame to crunch that line of scrimmage and force Andrew Maxwell to beat them. He's been a little spotty in terms of turnovers. He threw for 2 touchdowns last week, Andrew Maxwell did, but in that opening win against Boise State, he did turn the ball over with 3 interceptions. He's only thrown 2 touchdowns. He's thrown 3 interceptions. How good has he come along in the passing game? Look for Notre Dame to exploit that and force Andrew Maxwell to beat them. For Michigan State, they're going to want to run the football. That's their strength. Their offensive line is big, and to date, they've manhandled both Boise State and Central Michigan. Le'Veon Bell had a good game last week. He rushed for about 70 yards on limited carries, but he did rush for 2 touchdowns in the blowout against Central Michigan on the road. So head coach Mark D'Antonio has brought Andrew Maxwell along to this point, but going forward, they're going to need to open it up as well as they go into the Big Ten Conference, and as they move along in the ranks, they're going to need a balanced attack. They have a balanced attack right now, but in terms of competition, they have faced Boise State and then Central Michigan. So we have to see in terms of the talent. This is a good Notre Dame defense. This is a step up from, yes, both Boise State and Central Michigan. So we're going to have to see how Andrew Maxwell performs. He is a junior. He is big. He's got a good arm, and look for Dan Antonio to work him into the passing game a little bit more in this game. He has the home field advantage with the crowd, so expect Maxwell to take shots and force Notre Dame to loosen up a little bit. Defensively for the Spartans, they're led by their All-American defensive end, William Golston, and that defensive line. Their linebackers are experienced, their D-line is big, and look for them to stuff the line of scrimmage and get pressure on Everett Golston and force Notre Dame into third and longs. Michigan State does have a weakness. It's in their secondary. They gave up big plays last year. They gave up some big plays against Boise State, and that's where the weakness of Michigan State's defense is, in their secondary. So if Notre Dame can exploit that, they will have a chance. If Notre Dame becomes one-dimensional and cannot run the football, we expect a Michigan State blowout here. So we're going to see how it plays out. Michigan State's going to look to cramp the line of scrimmage as well, force Everett Golston into short throws, and force Everett Golston into reading the defense. He's only a sophomore, so we have to see how this game plays out. That's the factors. Michigan State has won 3 of the last 5, but they dropped last year's game at South Bend, 31-13. Traditionally, these teams played close games. If you remember 2 years ago, Michigan State had a fake field goal that they pulled out to win 34-31. It was such a stressful affair for head coach Mark D'Antonio. He was rushed to the hospital after that game with a mild heart attack. So that's something. These games they're emotional. They've been up and down affairs. Expect Notre Dame to be up for this game. Expect Michigan State to be up for this game. We're going to break it down a little bit later in the week with our prediction. It's going to be a great matchup, and stay with us at www.acsportstips.com.